Let's talk further about the medium-term budget policy statement now. We're joined tonight by Stanlib Chief Economist Kevin Lings. Kevin, a very good evening to you. Good to have your time tonight. Was this a good budget?
Look, I think it was probably the best the minister could do under the circumstance. If you think about the different components that he had to cope with, he's got a revenue shortfall that I guess is substantial. He's got expenditure running ahead of budget. He's got a huge amount of pressure on him in terms of social payments, salary commitments in an election year. He's got to fund state-owned enterprise. It's a huge demand on National Treasury to come up with some sort of mix that makes this all work. And I think to his credit, he did a good job. But overall, you would say the circumstance is that the government's fiscal position has clearly deteriorated. We haven't been able to make the targets. And the deterioration is even more noticeable. The minister is obviously intending that over the next couple of years we can rein that deterioration in. We can try and improve the position. But quite frankly, without a meaningful increase in economic growth, that's going to be challenging. And if I look at the minister's growth projections, he doesn't even have the growth rate going above 2% for the next 3 years. So to make all of these demands, to meet all of these commitments, and you're only growing the economy at somewhere between 1% to 2%, very challenging for any Minister of Finance to achieve.
And whose fault is it, Kevin, that our economic situation is as it is at the moment?
Unfortunately, it's government's fault. It's the broad public sector. You can kind of line up the different problems, whether it's Eskom, that's a major cause. Transnet, it's critical to the functioning of business and our export capability. Whether it's government itself in terms of their policy agenda, whether it's got to do with, focusing much more on consumption expenditure, in other words, paying salaries and cutting back on infrastructure delivery. There are many things that have played out over the last number of years to put us in this position. You throw on top of that extreme state capture, corruption. It's been a melting pot of difficulties. And it's obviously been one problem after the next that has allowed us to get to this position. Going forward now, it looks to me that it's a long road to get this under control. There's no easy fix. There's no quick fix, especially if government wants to retain their position and control in the state-owned enterprises and in different parts of the country. Obviously, if government changed their entire approach dramatically and decided to downscale the public sector enormously, then yes, you could effect more substantial changes. But I think that's unrealistic. So if you look at what the minister's put on the table, it's a multi-year fix. In other words, it's going to take us many years to try and put us into a better position from a fiscal perspective.
I'm curious about this revenue shortfall because it's come up time and time again. If it is not reined in, what are the threats to the country?
Well, so the revenue shortfall, I think, significant. 56 billion is significant. Obviously, it's not across every single sector. It was mostly in the mining area and VAT collection under pressure. But it's obviously not helpful. And the point you would have to make is that how does it get much better? Realistically, how does it get better? If you grow the economy at 1 to 2%, the population grows at 1.6%, you're not really going to generate employment growth. So let's say we grow the economy 1.5%. Are we going to add a significant number of jobs? Are we going to expand the tax base? Are companies going to make a huge amount of profits? Very unlikely, right? So that means that our tax revenue collection is going to remain under pressure until we get the economy growing. And what does that mean? It means either government keeps getting more and more in debt in order to fund the public sector we've got. We can't afford the public sector we've got, so it means we're going to get more and more into debt until it's an outright crisis. Or the government has to scale back. It has to reduce its size. It has to cut a whole lot of things, departments, costs across a range of categories, and trim down the size of government to match the revenue that we can generate, the tax revenue we can generate. That's the choice that we have. I think it's preferable.
on that, Kevin, when you talk about trimming, what we heard today that has been welcomed in previous budget announcements is the fact that no further bailouts are going to be given to the quote-unquote problematic SOEs, Denal, Eskom, Transnet. None of them are getting more money. Is that then a sign of government understanding just how serious a position we're in, how dangerous perhaps a financial situation we're in?
I think that's the case. I think National Treasury fully understands the danger. I think the Minister does. I think that announcement about not simply handing over more money to the SOEs, I think that reflects that concern, putting the pressure back on the SOEs to effect reforms and restructure, and then have a look at how government can assist them longer term, using the model that they've created with Eskom and apply that same model to other SOEs. Exactly the right approach. The difficulty, obviously, is are the SOEs able to do that? Is that realistic? We don't know. And if they're not able to do that, they're critical for the functioning of the country. If Transnet can't restructure, what happens? The economy struggles even more. So government is pushing back, rightfully so, but we can't allow Transnet to fail, just as we couldn't allow Eskom to fail. So there's ultimately got to be some support given to these entities in a sensible way. And if I listen to government the minister talk about restructuring over the next 3 years, that is coming about for exactly that same reason. Government is realizing it's too big, too many departments, too many salaries. It's got to restructure. And it's got to do that in a sensible way in an environment where jobs are hard to come by, so you don't want to aggravate the unemployment environment unnecessarily. So some tough choices for government, but I think the message is clear.
I'm glad you mentioned the issue of unemployment. It is a crisis in this country, has been for years. We heard again today about a 1-year extension of the Social Relief of Distress grant, first introduced during COVID to help people with no other source of income. 34 billion rand, I think, is what it is going to cost now going further due to this extension. Is it a sign from Treasury that even during these difficult times, that ultimately this grant is one that the country does need long term, and that perhaps they're playing with the numbers to see if it's possible to do?
Yeah, I think it's reflecting the social reality of the country, the fact that unemployment rate is high and it's very difficult for people to find jobs, and that it's now become a vital part of people's survival. There's, almost 8 million people that get that grant. That's enormous. Add that to the 18 million people that get normal social grants. This has become a major factor in the South African economy, and obviously it costs a huge amount of money. But government can't remove it. You can't take away that sort of grant under these economic conditions. That's a recipe for social disaster. You've got to try keep it in place and then look at a more comprehensive revision to the social program to decide what is appropriate and what can we afford. And I think that is the intention, and to me that's the right way to go. I don't see government necessarily wanting to increase that 350 every year, and it in itself becomes a bigger and bigger entity. I think over time we're going to see it consolidated into other social programs so that you end up with one cohesive social program agenda in South Africa.
Kevin Lings, Chief Economist at Stanlib. Good to talk to you. Thank you.